You're listening to the Black to Business podcast, an educational podcast providing Black entrepreneurs with the tools and resources to start and grow their businesses. We chat with vetted Black entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and business owners as they provide tips and resources to help take your business to the next level. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall. Hello, welcome back to the Black to Business podcast. I'm your host, Monique T. Marshall, and I am so excited about today's episode. Just a little bit nervous, but I know I say that about every episode, but I really am excited because this is the first time we're doing this type of episode in Black to Business history. But also I thought it's a better time. What better time than to do this now, because we're coming up on the end of the year of 2021 and diving into 2022. And I thought I want to let the people know what's going on at Black to Business. What are we up to? How was the year for us? What are some of the things that we're working on? So this is a solo episode. Yes. So this is my first time ever doing a solo episode, so bear with me. But I thought, why not do it for the family? This is our last episode of the year. And you all have been showing up with us every Thursday since we've relaunched the podcast in February this year. We've had the pleasure of bringing an episode every week, not missing a week, except we did miss Blackout Week, which was the week of Black Friday. We took a break, but we were right back, and it's such a pleasure to be here with you. And I just want to thank you for showing up and letting us be a part of the journey, your entrepreneur journey, whether it's you're just starting your business, you're in the idea phase, or you've been in business for a while. We are so honored that you look to us to help you get to those next levels that you need to be in. So we appreciate you. We thank you. And we know that it's not easy, but you are still doing it, and know that what you are doing is so necessary. So we are here to support you. So thank you. And we appreciate you. So, like I said, this is my first time doing this, and I am a little nervous, but hey, we always talk about on Black to Business, you have to step outside of your comfort zone. You hear the guest say it every time, so who am I to be preaching to the choir? I need to be stepping outside of my comfort zone as well. So I thought it would be cool to kind of share with you all a little bit about me, just a little bit, and also about what inspired Black to Business. I know if you are on our email list, you got an email from me that really shared a little bit of my story and what inspired me to start Black to Business. But for those of you who haven't heard my story, I just want to give you a little bit of the background into my start with Black to Business and why I'm very passionate about the work that I do and why I show up in the way that I do with Black to Business and why it's so important. So I am originally from Georgia, Ocilla, Georgia, small town to be exact, born and raised. Small town, about 4,000 people, but it's filled with so much love. And I always say that I was fortunate enough, I grew up with very humble beginnings, but one of the things is I was very fortunate enough to be raised by a community, a village of people. It was like that town where everybody is related, everybody can, but when I went off to college, people just wrapped their arms around me and supported me in whatever I wanted to do. So I'm originally from Ocilla, Georgia, and I currently live in Brooklyn, New York, a city girl right now. But just a little bit about what inspired me to start Black to Business. I grew up in a small town where it's in the South. And so all of the things that you can imagine with a place being remnants, I like to say remnants of the Jim Crow South. There was a black side of town. There was a white side of town. There was a black prom queen. There was a white prom queen, like a white cemetery, a black cemetery, and all of these crazy things. So, of course, you know it's saying get out. But just growing up like that, I always kind of felt I read a lot. And what I had for inspiration was TV. I had books, and I was always inspired by people in our community like Oprah who were doing great things. Like those images mattered to me. So that's why I say representation mattered, because that's what I had to look up to when it came to entrepreneurship and business owners. I always kind of felt that I wanted to own a business ever since I was young, but I didn't know how I was going to get there. So, because the only images I had growing up, honestly, were probably like the beautician, the barbershop, and the funeral home person. So, I really was like, okay, I knew at a young age, this isn't right. When I get older, I'm going to do something about it. I've always been that kind of like active person. If I don't like something, I'm going to do something about it. I'm not going to just sit there and just let life happen to me. And so that's a little bit about what inspired Black to Business. So fast forward to when it was coming time to go to college, I would never forget, I was kind of young. And I saw this image on TV with all of these amazing, powerful Black young people at this college. And I thought, I want to go to that school. Like, they're so amazing. And all I saw was H. I was like, H. And I thought it was Harvard. And I said, I want to go to that school. So I always grew up like, oh, I want to go to Harvard. I want to go to Harvard. And it wasn't until I was in high school, I figured out that it was Howard, only because one other person that I'd ever known, a little bit older than me, actually went to Howard. And I started to research, and I'm like, that's the school I want to go to. So I kind of like, that's the story behind where I went to school. So I went to Howard University. Shout out to HU, whoever is listening, HU Bison. And I just knew they produce so many Black excellent people. And when I tell you my first time going to DC was the day I got dropped off by my parents. And it was just such an experience for me coming from this small town. And people like to say, were you culture shocked? And I wasn't about the city life. I really was about how many beautiful and different Black people there were in Chocolate City. Like, that's what was shocking to me, because I did not grow up seeing these different variations of what Blackness is. So I think, again, that's why representation matters. So fast forward, I studied supply chain management, School of Business. And when I tell you, we always used to say the H in Howard stood for hustle. Like, it was nobody that I knew that wasn't working on something in the midst of going to school. Like, we were always encouraged to work on things that would be businesses with one another. I started so many businesses with my peers, and also just like giving back to our community. We were really much pushed to give back, very much pushed to give back to our community. So that is one of the things I think is one of my greatest experiences. So I went to Howard, I studied business school. But one of the things I noticed is that within business school, there were people who wanted to start businesses, but they didn't actually have the resources that they needed to get started. So it's like you have this idea, but okay, how do you do it? And another thing I learned pretty quickly is I didn't want to go into corporate America, because in business school, you were encouraged to intern at these companies, these big corporations. And I remember I went to this top financial company I was interning, and I just did not like it. I didn't like it. I was like, this is not going to be for me. And I thought, where are the Black businesses? And a couple of things popped up for me. It's where are they? Do we have enough capital to afford to hire one another? And it was like, from there, I started to think about ways to formulate a business model that could inspire us to really like start businesses, be able to raise capital. And I think at that time, it was like just a lot of social unjust and unrest happening in our community. And I began to think, you know, all of these frustrations that were coming together. And I thought, like, a lot of the reasons, one of the reasons that I believe in our community, we are in the space that we're in, is because we don't own anything for the most part. And I thought ownership is power. And for me, ownership meant either through a business, either through real estate, or through land ownership. Like, all of those things started to show up. So I thought, what would be my way to make a difference in my community? And I remember my senior year, about 2014, I was home for the holidays, and I was just brainstorming, thinking. And that's what really ignited Black to Business in my head. And I started to act on it. So I really wanted to create a platform that would help people start businesses, you know, get the capital or get the plans that they need to get the capital and create a sustainable business. So that is what inspired Black to Business. And really, it was honestly born out of frustration. And I thought, you know, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm going to do something about it. So there we have Black to Business today, and our main focus today is really teaching people how to turn what they know, their knowledge, skills, and expertise into a business. And I think a lot of things that we struggle with in our community is access to capital. So the way that we show up on this podcast every week is we want to show you how to do it in a way that you can get either you can bootstrap it or you can start with little capital and resources. And I don't want money to be a reason why people don't start businesses. And I think that the more Black businesses we have with a proper foundation, the more we can be around for the long haul, and the more we can continue to impact, employ those within our community. And I always say that my business is focused on Black entrepreneurs, aspiring Black entrepreneurs. And it's not to say that everyone who is a listener is a business owner that's a part of our community. Your target audience may be totally different. But one of the things we always encourage at Black to Business is no matter who your customer is, operate in excellence and have the skills, the tools that you need to be able to meet the needs of your customer, regardless of who they may be. So, and we're also going to talk about clarity today, why that's so important. That's something that I push really, really hard on Black to Business and the platform. So that's a little bit about me and about Black to Business, how it all came to fruition. And we've been around for years and we are still kicking and thriving. So that is our story. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the things that we do, some of the things that we're working on doing. We've been listening to our audience. We've really been this year focused on really niching down further. And some of the things that we do, you notice, is that our podcast is big for us, but it's really an actionable podcast. We really spend a lot of time and resources into making sure that this podcast is valuable for our community, for our family, for the listeners, but also for the guests that show up each week. So we are very intentional about the types of questions that we ask. I always like to say when it comes to the podcast that we really push for now, and we may change some of the things we're going to be testing in 2022. But we really push for the guests to come on and speak on their area expertise, because it's a two-way street for you and for the guests, that it's a better way to spend both people's times. So for you, you're gaining value, and for the guests, they may be flexing their expertise in hopes that you might work with them one day. So take a look at who's all been on the podcast. These are people that we vouch for, that are vetted. We do a lot of research. We don't just bring on anybody. But the podcasts are very actionable. We're intentional with the outline because we want to make sure that, like I said before, that whatever you learn from the podcast, you can take it and implement it either immediately or immediately look to hire someone to do it for you in your business when you're ready. So we're intentional about actionable podcasts, very workshop style, very much you can get their story maybe another place. But this time when you're spending on Black to Business, listening to Black to Business is spent on learning about their industry and area expertise. So we have the podcast that's very educational. We have our directory that we're building up. We launched that this year, The Connect, and it's really focused on, we get a lot of people who are a part of our audience in our community and just our family. We call them family, your family. And I like to say you're stuck with us. But we get a lot of people that ask us, like, do we know people that do this, and this? And they want specifically to patronize Black-owned businesses. And so we're building up this directory because we want to be able to give you the resources that you need in an accessible location. You're not hunting and pecking all over the internet. So that's something we also offer, is our directory. Right now we have a couple of amazing businesses, and in 2022 we're adding even more. So check that out. If you're a business owner that provides professional services, you may also apply for your business to be listed on the directory. What else do we offer? We offer our free toolkit, which is a list of resources that you can use in your business that may be free or affordable. And again, we really encourage people to start financially smart. So some of these tools that we list are free or at a very low cost. And so we're very intentional about the resources that we give to you. So we have our free toolkit at blacktobusiness.com/toolkit. And then we are really about sharing knowledge. There is this thing that a lot of people like to say, is that we don't share with each other in our community. And that's something that we're setting the standard, and we really believe in setting a standard of yes, we do. So we have our tools we use page on the Black to Business website, and it's really, if you haven't checked it out, it's a list of tools that we've used in the business that has really helped us streamline some things, automate some things, and we want to share with you what we know works. So check out the tools we use. So that's what we offer currently. And then some of the things that we're working on for 2022 is we are working on a course offering people the opportunity to take advantage of a course that would give them the foundational things that they need to get started in their business or take their business to the next level. So that's what we're working on for 2022. And we're also working on trying a couple of new things with the podcast. And let us know how you've been liking the podcast. You can email me directly at monique@blacktobusiness.com. And of course, if you haven't left a review, please do that for us because it is very much appreciated and we love to hear feedback. So if there's some things that you want to hear more of when it comes to starting a business, please email me. Or if you've been loving this episodes that we've been putting out each week, please share it or leave a review. And another thing that we're very excited to be working on in 2022 is more strategic partnerships and with some pretty cool people and some organizations. So stay on the lookout for those things. So that's what's going on at Black to Business. We are a simple business model, but that's something that we'll talk about also and why that matters. And hopefully you can take something away from this conversation. I want to share with you a few things that went well for us this year, and I'm excited to share because maybe you can learn something from this and use it in your business. And so a couple of things are, one is that us niching down further. So I'll talk about the fact that we really spent a lot of time on doing surveys, really looking at our analytics, looking at our KPIs, key performance indicators. We really tracked a lot of things to see what are people interested in listening, knowing from us, and what do people come to us for. And so niching down to say that, we focus on helping people who want to turn their knowledge, skills, and expertise into a business is very important, and it's something that took time because we realized that what was happening is a lot of business owners were coming to us, and we always want to figure out, okay, do we have a resource for them? And as we began to look at some of the things that we offer, it was about, making sure that we could say, okay, we have this resource for you. And what we looked at is that it's important for us to really encourage people to start businesses. But I think another thing is we want to spread the message that people who are starting businesses, specifically Black entrepreneurs who are starting businesses, to create a business that allows you to live a life that you love. And when we think about living a life that you love, it's, not really worrying about capital, not really worrying about all these outside things. So we started to think about how can we encourage people to look within them and find and realize that business that they have. So a lot of people within our audience, we noticed were dealing with professional services. So we started to really create resources that spoke to that business owner. Now, it's important to note that niching down means that you know who you're speaking to, and that doesn't mean that other people aren't attracted to your message. It just means that when you're creating content, when you're creating resources, you are so specific on who you're speaking to that when other people come and they listen and they take advantage of their services, your services, they know that, okay, I'm going to take this with a grain of salt, and that I know that this may not all the way be for me, but I gain value in this. So with that being said, we realize that a lot of our audience members also have product-based businesses, and they can learn a lot from these podcast episodes. They can learn a lot from the tools that we use. But right now, we're just niching down to business owners who can turn their knowledge, skills, and expertise into a business, because at the end of the day, when you are able to operate a business from that space, you can start with, I would say, generally less capital. You can also take your business anywhere. If you want to travel, you want to go do your business, when COVID happened, if you want to do your business from home. So we really focused on niching down further on who we served. And also, another thing that went well for us is really getting clear on simplifying what we offer on our platform. So like I just mentioned, some of the things that we offer, it took us some time to get really simple. And I get it. A lot of people want a go-to place, but when you're so clear on who you serve, and this is the message for anyone, when you're so clear on who you serve, you're able to say no to certain things, to certain opportunities, and maybe point people in a direction of where they can get the answers that they need. So I think simplifying was very key for us, and it allows us to use our team. We have a very small and powerful team, so really use our team to the max. And another thing is staying consistent. So I mentioned before that we brought back the podcast this year, February, since I think we hadn't posted a podcast since 2018. But we spent a lot of time on planning that podcast relaunch, and we wanted it to be intentional. So one of the things that as a leader I noticed is, how are we going to consistently show up for our community so that they can say, okay, we know we're going to hear from Black to Business every day at this time, every week this time. So we were very intentional about picking the day that we picked to launch these podcast episodes, picking the time. If you're on an email list, we send out an email every Thursday at 6:30 a.m. And we know, our team knows, like every morning, email is going out on Black to Business. So what we realized that did for the business is it brought so many opportunities for us to be able to be the go-to source. People began to continue to trust us. They began to like us. They began to know us for certain things. And then that helped them decide what they can come to us for. So staying consistent definitely helped. We saw the numbers jump so much. Like, we've seen so many things that have happened with the podcast, with the referrals that happen from the directory, people who are on the podcast saying that people came to them and wanted to work with them in their business because of the podcast. So it's been so amazing. And we're coming up with some strategic partnerships that we're working on. But a lot of those came from us being consistent with our emails, us being consistent with our postings on social media, us being consistent with the value that we provide in our podcast, someone sharing an episode to someone, a decision maker. So those are some of the things that have really went well for us. Some of the things that didn't go so well, I think, were us continuing to amplify our message and spread the word about what we do. So our community has continued to grow, but I think that us niching down further and us simplifying really help with, okay, this is who we focus on, and us just really amplifying, the message and the marketing around, we really help people turn their knowledge, skills, and expertise into a business. It's something that we are still working on doing. So we're working on getting more visibility in 2022. And just, we were really excited about these partnerships because that is going to help us get more visibility that we need. So those are some of the things that didn't go so well for us. And another thing that didn't go so well, I think from a leadership perspective, is from a leadership perspective, I decided what are some of the platforms that we're going to focus on in 2022. In 2021, I really took a step back and saying, where are we getting the most engagement? And for us, we didn't really get a lot of engagement on social media. So it was a hard decision to say, okay, we're going to step back a little bit from social media, but that's like something that we're still working on growing. So that's just an insight and something that didn't work so well for us. Our social media presence is a little bit, it could be larger, but our email list is where we make the impact, where we make the money. So we spend a lot of time there. My favorite moments I want to share with you all as a leader and for Black to Business is we were able to be so fortunate this year to host our Men Who Lead series, our Black Men Who Lead series for the month of June. And that was so special because a couple of years ago, we partnered with Verizon to host an event which was Ladies Who Lead and Men Who Lead. And these events were really just focused on highlighting men in the community and in business who are really helping to push the culture forward. And we got a really great reception from that. And so COVID happened, and of course we couldn't host an event. So we thought, how can we take this online and keep going with this? So we were able to have a series on our podcast hosted by my dear friend Aquarius Kelly, and he actually moderated the first Men Who Lead event that we had in person. So we were so thankful to him for agreeing to host a series on the podcast. And that was, again, another thing we'd never done. We never had someone come in and host a podcast for us. And he's been so supportive in Black to Business in that anytime we've asked him to do something and help with the vision, he's always there. So I felt as a leader, it was important for me to have representation of a male on the podcast to lead that series and really have a conversation between two men. So we really were excited about that series. And we also were able to highlight 31 Black men in the business and community on our website, and that went really well. And I say it was my favorite moment because at Black to Business, one of the things is we want to give voices and we want to amplify the work that a lot of people who don't sometimes get recognition do. So we know sometimes being in entrepreneurship, it could be what we may feel is a thankless job, but we keep going. And what we wanted to encourage these men to see is that we see you, we see the work that you're doing, we see the work that you're doing in the community and business. And some of these men, this was their first time getting highlighted. So that was one of my favorite moments to be a part of an experience for our business owners in the Black community. Another thing is that we were being consistent this year with the podcast, and we actually got an organization reach out to us, and they shared with us that they got a grant from their city to help entrepreneurs open retail spaces. I think it was Black entrepreneurs, different background entrepreneurs, but open retail spaces in their community, in the mall. And so they reached out to us and said that they actually require for the business owners who are part of the program to listen to our podcast. So that was so amazing because you never know who's listening. So that was exciting for us to hear that people are listening, people are implementing our podcast in their businesses. So it was great. And another favorite moment is that we are reaching our goal of 20,000 downloads this year. So whoop whoop. All of the work is like paying off for the podcast. So we're really excited about that. And then another thing is I want to share with you all some of the top episodes from the Black to Business podcast. We had the top episodes were How to Balance Your episode number 65. That was with Mary Sipo, and it was about how to balance your career and entrepreneurship. That was one of our most listened episodes this year. So it speaks to a lot of our audience members are balancing their career and also balancing their businesses. So that's something that we pay attention to because we want to start to feed content and do content and give resources that would assist you as the listener, you as the family member in getting to the next level to maybe if you want to leave your job, or if you want to figure out how to balance the two if you love your job. And so that was great that we saw that was one of our top episodes. Another episode that was really popular was episode number 70. And that was with the importance of access to funding for Black entrepreneurs with Armand Davis of the Paragon Group. So I love having that conversation because we talked about, what it means for representation of Black business owners, but also how to be a leader in business, how to not have your ego in business, like they don't match. So we really dove right into like all of the things about, knowing the issues that we faced and figuring out how do we combat those issues? How do we go around those issues? How do we make sure that we're in a space to say like, okay, we know this is going to happen. What do I do when this happens? So that was another great episode. That was episode number 70. And another was number 66. That was how to create boundaries and hold yourself accountable to reach your business goals with Brandy Varnando. If you have not listened to that episode, that is like one of my favorite episodes. She's an accountability coach, but she really gave practical advice and tips. And all about holding ourselves accountable, creating boundaries, which is something that we all struggle with in our business. So that was a very good episode. And then I'm just going to give the top 5. The next one was episode number 71. I was so happy to see that this was one of our top episodes, and it actually came out in November 18th. And this one was episode 71, Building a Family Business and Legacy Planning, with Nike Anini. And I was excited that was a top episode because, again, it just came out, but it was so popular in that it makes me smile that we're thinking about creating family-owned businesses and creating a business that leaves a legacy. So to know that that's top of mind for our audience, it did my soul really good. So again, that's episode number 71, Building a Family Business and Legacy Planning. So I'm proud of you all. We are thinking ahead. I love it. And the fifth most listened to episode number 64. And that episode was how to use digital advertising to grow your business online. And that was with Abu Fafana. I was so excited that he agreed to be on the show. He's everywhere. If you don't know who he is, it's the funniest ad that he has, but he's an ad expert. And we were so grateful for him to be on the podcast. But he really, again, gave actionable advice on how to, create advertisements in your business digitally, online, and growing your business. So that was a really good episode number 64. So those are some of the top moments from Black to Business. And I tell you, I'm so excited about what's to happen for us and what's happening for you, our family members. So those were some of my favorite moments. And yeah, so I want to go into tips. I want to leave you with some valuable advice, tips as a leader. And one of the things I mentioned before is having clarity in your business is so key, because when you have clarity, you know who your people are. So you have to be clear on who you serve, because that allows you to speak directly to those people and create with them in mind. So you're not wasting your time when you're creating content, when you're creating products, services. So my tip for you is to really get clear in your business on who you serve, and take some time to maybe get on the phone with people and really just have a conversation with those people who are engaging with your content the most, and saying, hey, would you mind taking this quick survey? Hey, would you mind jumping on this quick call? Hey, we just appreciate you for being a valuable customer, a valuable audience member. And from that conversation or from that survey, really start to think about, how can I really niche down to who I'm talking to and create products and services around those people? And another tip I would give is to set clear goals and be consistent with those goals. So from a leadership perspective, one of the things I had to look at is, what do we have access to, and the people on my team, how can they best serve within the business? So I had to set goals for people within my team. One of the things is, I knew that, it would be great to have podcasts every day, or not every day, probably like twice a week. Hopefully we can get there. But what was doable for us? And I thought, we come from doing a podcast episode probably every other week, once a month. And I thought, how can we set a goal that would be possible, but also it would stretch us a little bit? And that was to create an episode every single week and figure out, okay, let's do this for the rest of this year and see what the results are going to be. And so we did that consistently, and we really figured out a way to show up for our audience in their inbox every week. And the way that we did that was something simple as, tailoring our emails around our podcast episodes. So that really helped us gain the trust of our audience. So I think setting those goals. Also, I mentioned the fact that we are at 20,000 downloads with the podcast. That was a goal for us to reach by the end of this year. So we really set that goal. And what I did each week, I really tracked the amount of listens, the amount of topics that were getting certain listens. And I started to amp up certain topics so that we could reach those goals. Because again, I was listening to my audience without speaking to them. I was listening to them through numbers. So goal setting is really key. Those are some of the goals that we set. Revenue goals, of course, really get specific on the amount that you want to make per month, per week, per day. And I think that really helped us be able to really do some additional things within Black to Business because we had those financial goals. And then also we really took a step back on, our tools we use page. It used to be longer, but what we did was we cut some of the tools that we were using within the business because that allowed us to spend that money elsewhere. So really, really taking the time to look through your financials in your business. And I always like to say a lot of people may be bootstrapping, but one of the things we also want to think about is how can we not just cut money and budget, but also how can we make more money so that we can do more things in our business. So I really encourage you to audit your business and get organized. I mentioned before we do tracking of our numbers a lot. We look at them to help us reach our goals. So if you could just create like a Google Doc, Google spreadsheet, simply, and just write down what are the top numbers in your business that matters. So for example, for us, it matters how much money we're making in our different avenues, how many people were getting signed up for different things, how many people are buying this different things that we sell. So we track those numbers. We also look at how many people are downloading our toolkit, how many people are looking at the directory, but also how many people are listening to these podcasts. So those are some of the numbers that we track. We track our website visits. We track all of the things that we spend money on. And then my experience as a leader, I would say I've learned this year to really listen to my gut and let go, whether it be let go of certain opportunities, whether it be to let go of certain team members. So really letting go and listening to your gut, I think, is a part of business, and failing fast sometimes and pivoting. I would say that one of the things I learned is that I'm a person who likes to hold on. So it was really hard for me. I had to practice how to let go of things because as a leader, you have to be able to pivot. So that's one of the things I practiced this year. And I tell you, it has really, really shown up for us in that, I've been able to really do some things within the business because I was able to let go really much faster. So also being transparent. So one of the things that my team always says is that I'm very transparent. And I think that helps build the trust, but it also has less confusion. So even with people I work with, people that are on the team, I think that that's one of the things I really, really value is being transparent of where we are, where are the goals, where are they, how are they meeting their goals. And I think that helps build that level of trust and level of respect. Also, some of the things that I also worked on was learning how to be uncomfortable. So this right now is uncomfortable for me, but I want to keep practicing being uncomfortable. So can we practice this together? But really being uncomfortable has really helped. I could see where this has helped grow my business. So for example, me learning to be more visible, that's something that I've always talked about that I struggled with because as a creative, I've always wanted to just create. And I didn't really need for people to know my name. I didn't really need for people to see me. But what I realized is the impact that people not seeing me had on my business. And I started to slowly put myself out there and being uncomfortable. So for me, one of the episodes we just had was Zaylee Barclay. She talked about getting comfortable on video. So that's something that I'm not there yet. But I will tell you that in 2022, I'm planning to slowly jump out there on because I started to practice with podcasting. Like that really helped me get comfortable with myself, hear myself speak. I used to not listen to these episodes afterwards, but now I do all the time because they're so valuable. They've always been very valuable, but it's like I've grown comfortable with listening to myself speak. And so just like today, this is uncomfortable. So those are some of the things that have really, really been my experience as a leader. And I really hope that you take something from this. Things I'm working on is, again, more knowledge sharing, more behind the scenes of what's going on with Black to Business, my experience as a business leader, and just really helping people continue to find clarity within their business, within their ideas. So that's some of the things that I'm working on, and also making myself more visible. Like, people wanted to know who's the face behind Black to Business, and I think it's important. I really care about who's behind these businesses that I support as well. So again, leading and practicing what I'm preaching. So that is what we are working on, the things I'm working on this year, and then ending up this year, and then also in 2022. And so that about wraps up a year in review for Black to Business, a recap on the business, my favorite moments, some of the lessons I've learned this year. And before I wrap this up, I do want to leave you with a couple of my favorite books that have really, really helped me in my journey. And hopefully that if you haven't read them, you take a look at these books, and I'll be sure to link them in the show notes. But one of my favorite books is Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. Again, I think this book was really life-changing for me because it was a plan to empower. It's about his plan to empower Black America, and I am very much inspired by Dr. Claude Anderson and his teachings because I feel that he's really, really done a lot in our community, and he's really impacted my life. He is a great inspiration behind Black to Business, and I always like to think of mentors in terms of about 2 to 3 people that I look up to, and he is absolutely in the top 2. He is number 1, honestly, but his readings, his books have really, really inspired and shaped my thoughts around Black entrepreneurship, being a Black person, and I really love his angle in that he really encourages us to take control of our situation and our life and just realize the power that we have as Black people, but also as Black leaders, and really lead with integrity. Like, when I created Black to Business, I always was very intentional about the message that we put out there, and leading with integrity is very, very important to me. So I really have been inspired by him. I've read a lot of his other books, and but this is my favorite one because honestly, this was one of the first books I read that really was like for Black people. And again, I wasn't exposed to a lot of these things when I was younger, so this really shaped my life. So again, Powernomics by Dr. Claude Anderson. Another book that I really, really love, I'm just putting them up here, is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. And this book was really good. It's one I've read a lot, but I like that he talks about how successful people, it's not about how many hours, not about just working hard to be successful. He really, really takes a psychological standpoint, but also just really looking at how your background shapes your future, how some of the things that you have no control of shape your future, and how some people are just set up for success. Others are, I wouldn't say aren't, but they just have to work a little harder in some ways. But it just talks about the achievement of those falling outside of the normal experience, and just hard work isn't enough. And I think that this really opened my eyes. And I think it's great for people who sometimes deal with comparing their story to someone else. You really have to look at every step of that person's life. And it may be one moment that set them up for success. And oftentimes I think about my own story in that I love to read a lot. My mother encouraged us to read a lot. And although we grew up with humble beginnings, life could have took another direction. But I really, really think that her encouraging us to read really shaped my life and where I am today. So I think if you haven't read this book, it's one of my favorites. I read it all the time, over and over again. And another book I love is Think and Grow Rich, A Black Choice by Dennis Kimbro. And I love this book because we always hear of the book Think and Grow Rich. And I think it's a guide that's different. I always think about our path is so different as Black people, and that's why I'm intentional about Black businesses and the words that I use, because our experiences are unique. And I really like that his plan takes into account like where we are as Black people and the path that we take to build wealth as Black people. So this is a book that I really, really love. I think I have the regular version of Think and Grow Rich, but I also think that this is my favorite. Again, Think and Grow Rich by Dennis Kimbro and Napoleon Hill. Another one of my favorite reads is Against Empathy by Paul Bloom. And that's about, it's the case for rational compassion. And I love this because as someone who is an empath, it really talks about how our impulse naturally is to empathize with people, but how we have to rationalize the way that we give empathy. Because if your instinct is to initially empathize, sometimes that clouds our judgment in order to make the best decision. So it's like the nice way would be for me to empathize with you in this moment. But in the end, the overall picture and the goal is that I cannot give empathy to this situation because it wouldn't help me meet the goals that we need to meet. And I always think about like those leaders who are in the Black community who are very, very much unapologetic in their messaging, and an empathetic person wouldn't be so unapologetic in their messaging. But I think that it's important for us to be unapologetic because it would be nice to say it in a nice way and put it with a bow on it. But the reality is that the Black community is struggling. Like, we don't need to say it nicely. Like, we are struggling. So that's some of the things I think about. But other ways that I use what I've learned in this book, again, Against Empathy by Paul Bloom. And lastly, Deep Work by Cal Newport. It's about rules for focused success in a distracted world. And I really like the message from this book is the importance of deep work. And I oftentimes think about me going home to Georgia and visiting sometimes how quiet it is. And sometimes I need that escape from the city. So fortunate to be able to do that. But I think that it's great in that I can go and do deep work there. Or he also talks about sometimes you have to go to extreme measures to focus on meeting your goals. So it was a story in there about this guy who wanted to write a book. Well, this lady who wrote Harry Potter, like she literally needed to finish the last few chapters. So she went and rented got this hotel that was crazy amounts of money a night, but she knew that her putting that money behind that hotel room and those extremes would help her finish those books. So it's like, I didn't rent this hotel room for nothing. Like I got this hotel room to help me finish this chapter, and it encouraged her to finish a chapter that she needed to finish. Some variation of that story, but that's another one of my favorite books. So that is a reading list that I love, and I always share, and I gift it to people all the time, these books. But I will be sure to put those in the show notes. Again, if you want to get all the resources mentioned, go to blacktobusiness.com/76 for all the resources mentioned. And I really want to take this time to thank you for listening. If you listen all the way to the end, I appreciate you. But I want to leave you with a message in that you are doing your best, and just keep going and know that you have to keep going with blinders on, and your journey is your own journey. So what you are doing is necessary. There is someone watching. You may not think they're watching, but they're watching, and they're watching with good intentions. So if you're thinking someone isn't becoming a client, it may be next week that they become that client. So I always think about, why would I quit today when tomorrow might be the day that I win? So that's what I want to leave you with. And again, thank you for listening. Thank you for having Black to Business be a part of your journey wherever you are. And I hope that you like this episode. I will say it wasn't so bad. I could talk. I'm very much an introvert, but when I get to talking, I can talk. So you all are like family. You are like family. So it made it easy. But we really appreciate you. And let me know how you like this episode. If you want to hear more, what are some of the things that you would love to hear on Black to Business podcast? You can send me an email at monique@blacktobusiness.com, or you can submit it on our contact form on our website. Again, Happy New Year, and I hope that you have everything that you desire. And again, I encourage you to push yourself and step outside of your comfort zone this year. And I'm hoping for the best for you. And if you need anything, use Black to Business. Thank you, and see you next week. Same time, same place.